surprise party last night, and to come in and to see close friends, people that I really love, here really surprised me. In fact, last night I was so excited and I guess excited as well as sort of mixed emotions. The happiness brought tears again. So I really want to say thank you. I couldn't have asked for anything any greater than this. And also, thanks to Addie, who got us together to plan to write. I mean, we would work sometimes and then we wouldn't work again until we got back together. But we did share what we were pulling together. And one of the stories is that one of the times Addie or somebody said, well, what's your title? Which is going to be your title? And I gave them my title. And I think they said, oh yeah, that sounds okay. The next time I gave them a title, they said, oh, we didn't agree to that. Oh no, that's not what? Where'd you come up with that? And it's a title that's still here. So that was a lot of fun, and it was interesting to work together toward, while individual goals, one collective goal, and we enjoyed each other. And oftentimes, George would have us over.
Yes, for dinner.
For refreshments or dinner or what have you, to just sort of break over here. So that was a lot of fun. I elected to write the book. First of all, I wasn't thinking about writing a book, but I mentioned to Addie some time ago that my husband John had started to write a book. He was writing a book about the life of Jonathan, our son who took his life. He thought that circumstances around segregation and the things that he as a young man encountered influenced who he was, thus making a connection that perhaps it did in fact play a role in the reason he took his life. Also, they both had a lot in common. They were both football players, successful football players. They both became police officers. I never can remember how honored Staten was when Jonathan elected to wear his belt when he became a police officer. And of course, when he was buried in that belt, and which was all tattered, and they wanted to put a new crispy belt, and of course my husband said no. So because he had started that, I thought I could pick it up and finish it. That was very difficult to do. So then I backed up and said, okay, I'll write about Staten, about his life, because it was one that was interesting and challenging. And he had gone through a lot of issues, being the first in a lot of positions. But most importantly, the one that is detailed is when he was one of the first police officers in the Huntsville Police Department, as well as the first detective in the state of Alabama. So as I began to write about Staten, I was talking with Gloria Smith, one of our friends who's deceased. You know, some of you know Gloria. And Gloria said, why don't you just write about you too? I said, well, I don't know what to write about me. So with the group, I started writing about Staten, and then as we talked, I would share some of the incidents that I had growing up. And with those incidents, they said, well, that's interesting. So thus the book, which is back from the South, because we both were raised in the South in two different communities. We lived in the South, and then were recruited, which is this interesting part in the book, from there to Michigan, Muskegon, Michigan. And from Muskegon, we then lived in Lansing for approximately 38 years, most of our adult life, until we moved back to Hampton, Georgia. We kind of wanted not to go to Florida in the winter. He retired earlier. He was somewhat older than I. He retired, I believe, 7 years before I retired. And he loved Florida. I didn't care for Florida. So we began to look around, and of course, we ended up in this area without directing or having this as a goal to be here. Of course, my best friend was already living here, and my stepson, John, who most of you know, was living here.
There he is.
And Jason was living here. And so that was kind of, and then I had my two first cousins. Ken was living here out in Duculus, north of Atlanta, and the cousins that some of you met last night was living in Alpharetta. I mean, Roswell. Correct. Thank you. So anyway, that worked out fine, but that was not our purpose. The reason we really started looking here was because Staten's two frat brothers who live in Fayetteville told them, man, come on down and look in Fayetteville. And so we started out looking in Fayetteville. And of course, George thought we'd look in this area as well. So anyway, that's how we came back to the south. We got back to the south. And I think the salient points there is that while there's a perception of racism and discrimination in the South, there is also racism and discrimination inherent in the North. So that's kind of where I kind of got the book. So I don't know. The book is about John, raised and born in Pulaski, Tennessee, home of the Ku Klux Klan. It's about me, raised in Birmingham, Alabama, which most of you know was one of the most segregated cities in the country. A lot of demonstrations, a lot of things happened there. And Jonathan, who was born in Alabama but was raised in Huntsville. And so the lives sort of come together, and it's articulation of experiences relative to segregation and discrimination, as well as other challenges that we encountered in life, including the death of Jonathan, including long-term depression that my husband struggled with, including trying to get a home in the North, and looking and being turned down or shuffled with some kind of excuse because they didn't want to sell to blacks at that time. The first on many jobs in the integrated system, both for Staten and for myself. So I think the book itself should provide a strong basis for discussion and interaction regarding this whole issue of segregation and integration, where we are today and what some of us are fearful that we'll have to be confronted with again after having fought for certain rights. So that's it. And I'm just delighted for all of you to be here. I'm humbled and thank you. John, that's John Staten Jr. Yeah, and where is Patricia? There's Patricia, one of our, she's working here too, right? She's
yes.
a special assistant.
Yes,
but
she and Evelyn.
Right, and she would come to the house as well as, where is Evelyn? Evelyn just left. Let's see, where is Louis? James wanted to be sure to recognize her coming from Mississippi. He's from Mississippi, and he always thinks that Mississippians are the best and the smartest.
That's
so he
right.
said. So anyway, so Evelyn, I just thank all of you, and I'm just really humbled for this recognition. I just can't tell you how it's making me feel, and what a treat it is to have this in my repertoire of life. And Spring, I call Spring my child. Yes. Spring dated Jonathan. Yes. I met her in the elevator in the Department of Education, and she was an auditor. Yes. And I said, oh, maybe I should introduce you to my son. And I did. And she's mentioned in the book as well. Yes. She didn't know that.
No, I didn't.
Yeah.
You are actually live on Facebook. Can you tell my friends how you might order the book?
I think the fastest way, according to most people, is to go to Amazon.com and put in my name, Teressa Staten, Teressa Staten, or they can go to the website www.tvstat.com.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you guys for joining.
Okay.